Hey, everybody, and welcome to the season premiere. Yes, season 4. We've made it through 4 seasons of the Retro Wrestling Rewind. And of course, tonight we are covering Wrestling for a Cure. It's from the American Wrestling Association. This is back from 1985. It's a great event for a great cause. And of course, I could not, I repeat, could not do the show without my 2 tag team partners. This is a 6-man tag. We kind of like the Freebirds. We can interchange, but introducing first, the great, the one, the only, Mike Steyer, man. Mike, welcome back into the program. It's a season premiere. Can you believe it? We've made it to season 4, and we've made it to a new year. Happy New Year, and welcome back into the program.
Thanks. I just want to ask, can I be Terry Gordy? Because I do not want to be Buddy Roberts.
You don't want to be Michael P.S. Hayes. He is the greatest singer ever in rock and roll history. But I mean, it's interesting. But of course, you know, this 6-man cannot be without a 3rd man. Let's add him to the broadcast all the way from Music City. And he, of course, he is having technical issues, but we will bring him back. But tonight we are covering Wrestling for a Cure. This is from the AWA. This happened in 1985. Before we get into the I guess the meat and potatoes of the broadcast, what was your thoughts on this event? I mean, it had some good matches. There was one match that the Brad Reganis Billy Robinson match. I mean, I could leave it or take it. What were your thoughts when I said, "Hey, we're going to be talking AWA's Wrestling for a Cure"?
Well, the first thing that came up was nostalgia because I was only, let's see, in 85, I was 11. So, you know, this would have been the time period. Hey, there's Tyler. Hey, glad you could make it. And he's frozen already.
He looks great. He looks great like that. I mean,
oh, sure. And he's got his mouth open, which no surprise. But anyways, I thought this was a great, I thought it was a pretty good card. I really thought it was good nostalgia because you know, they held it for for trying to find a cure for remind me
muscular dystrophy.
Okay, MD. So and just seeing the young guys take on the old guys, Martel versus Bockwinkel was interesting. I love seeing the old commercials. I'm not gonna lie. TJ Maxx was around in 1985. I had no idea, and you know, having 45 Snuggle commercials to go through, yeah, well, that was fun. But it was a good card for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on Killer Kowalski? I mean, that man is a giant. Well, I mean, he's a giant compared to the guy who he was commentating with. I'm not sure how short that guy was. I know he was a little heavy set. I'm not judging, but I mean, I've seen some shows where they bring in non-wrestlers to talk about wrestling, like athletes, you know, football players and whatnot. But he did a good job. I mean, he held his own for being on commentary.
Killer Kowalski, yeah, he definitely did. And if you listen to the audio as you watched it, he corrected the announcer several times on the moves because the guy would be like a head crusher. No, he's like, that's a headlock, and calling it a monkey flip. And he's like, no, that's a sunset flip. So it was good to have somebody on there who actually knew what the moves were and the techniques, and someone who honored the kayfabe of the time period versus kind of making a mockery of it. And I think the other announcer, was he not like a hockey guy from the channel that put it on or something?
Yeah, I mean, it was an odd compare. It's like some TV station. They had all the people. They had a guy in the back interviewing the people. They had the greatest interview that I am a big Larry Zabisco mark. I love Larry Zabisco. He is. If you ever get a chance to meet him, he will talk your ears off until you just say, screw this, walk away. That guy is so nice, but he is such a great heel. I mean, I've seen some wrestlers who are better heels than baby faces, and Larry Zabisco is one. And I thought the guys, you know, I mean, I don't see these guys, you know, making a name in the professional wrestling business, you know, commentating and doing interviews. But they did a good job. I mean, it was for a cause. I mean, they raised money for muscular dystrophy, and it was 1985. I mean, kayfabe. I mean, it was a good It was a great show, but we kind of got some questions that we're going to be throwing out to people, listening and watching on Twitch. We have on our Facebook page. We have on our YouTube channel. We have a question. Who was the star of the show? I mean, you watched the show. I want to ask you, Mike, we'll talk about it then. Who was your star of the show? And which match would you watch again? I mean, I probably wouldn't watch the Brad Reganis Billy Robinson match again.
Okay,
I mean, I'm just saying.
that
I
was
mean,
so bad. Half of it were rest holds.
and another new segment we're going to be coming up. We're going to be talking about this week and next week. Just wanted to give a preview. It's 5 minutes into the show. Next week we're going to be covering Super Clash 3, which is a very, very good show. I mean, we're kind of going the AWA rabbit hole. I mean, it is a show that covers old wrestling. We're going to be bringing some wrestlers on, but we have other happenings, going on in the world of wrestling. We have some birthdays, we have some awards, and of course we have other notable shows, but kind of starting off the event, Bob Backlund, Larry Zabisco. I mean, what were your thoughts? I mean, Bob Backlund, a living legend back in 1985. What were your thoughts on him versus Larry Zabisco?
Never really a fan of Backlund, but as I got older, I recognized his ability, and it was apparent in this match between the two. And you knew with this kind of event, the good guys were going to open up well, and they were going to close well. And it certainly did in both cases here. Neither guy looked bad in some of these matches. Even though technically Backlund won, Zabisco still got a good rub. And I enjoyed this one because it was a good little back and forth thing. Pile drivers still scare the crap out of me. And this is an era when pretty much everybody did one. Bockwinkel had that in his repertoire, and Zabisco, and I was surprised to see Backlund do one too. But I thought this is a good little technical and fun match, and people forget how built Backlund was.
Yeah,
a former amateur wrestler, and man, he looked like it in 1985.
Yeah, I mean, 1985. I mean, that was a good year. It was I was 9 years old in 1985, and that was actually the year I started watching professional wrestling. I did not watch AWA because, I mean, I'm not sure back whenever you were growing up. AWA, I only saw AWA on ESPN. Mm-hmm. And it was, I mean, I saw World Class on ESPN. The only one that I saw each and every week was at 6:05 Eastern on the Superstation WTBS, World Championship Wrestling, the National Wrestling Alliance. But whenever I got to see AWA, they had some good shows. I mean, it was a good promotion. I mean, they had some great wrestlers there. I mean, Ric Flair would come in there, Larry Zabisco, Bob Backlund,
Road Warriors,
Nick Bockwinkel. I mean, Greg Gagne. I mean, and a guy who I'm actually friends with. He's going to be coming up in a match. Steve Regal, not Lord Steve Regal, but a Steve Regal from Florida. I mean, they had some. I mean, Rick Martel. They had the Road Warriors. They were the AWA Tag Team Champions, and of course, another guy who a lot of people forget about, made his way into the world of professional wrestling, the AKA Razor Ramon, the great Scott Hall.
Oh yeah,
I mean
him and Kurt Hennig were a great tag team, and so when he hit it big as Razor, I was like, wait a second, this is Scott Hall, the guy I used to watch on Saturday mornings with the big Magnum PI mustache and the curly hair. I'm like, okay, that is the same guy.
Yeah, I mean, and like Shawn Michaels, I mean. There were a lot. Hulk Hogan. AWA. I mean, yeah. I mean, it was more of a regional promotion. I mean, up in Minnesota, like in that general area. But a lot of guys made their mark. Like I said, Hulk Hogan. I mean, Shawn Michaels, a young Shawn Michaels. It was. I mean, it was a promotion. It was back in the days when they had territory wrestling. I mean, they had, the AWA was like in the Minnesota, that area, and then. Of course, NWA was in the South, and Florida had championship wrestling for Florida. And then California had, I don't know what California had, but they had a bunch of wrestling. I'm not sure whenever you were growing up. I only got wrestling. I only knew about wrestling like west of the Mississippi, like WWF, championship wrestling from Florida, the NWA. I mean, nowadays there are so many promotions that are in like other countries, other states that you hear about. I mean, do you think that is a good thing for the growth of professional wrestling, that people can live in Georgia but watch something on the internet from, from California or from another country?
I definitely think so because it helps those promotions and it helps those wrestlers too to get a little more famous. Even when, let's say like New Japan. I'm trying to think of another promotion that's very similar. Even like TNA when it first started off too, that it gives more exposure to these guys. And then I feel good when a wrestler comes from there and then they come and hit it big. Example, AJ Styles, that he had a good run where he was, and then comes to WWF and is able to do well. But it also puts pressure, I think, on the bigger promotions that they know that these other places, these other companies do exist, and they're doing well enough for themselves that the WWE has to up their game, and competition is always good.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, nowadays, you can watch anything online. I mean, I think back then, I think there was nothing, you would never get spoiled results. I mean, you had to be at the TV taping or the live event. That's the only thing I don't like about now. I mean, like say you're watching a pay-per-view or you hadn't watched a pay-per-view and, a WrestleMania or something, and you didn't want to know the results. You had to stay offline because somehow
Right.
you're going to get spoiled. But back then, I mean, the magazines were great. I mean, the Bill Apter magazines, Aptermax, like Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, they were great, but you could not get accurate current results because the magazines would be published weeks after, I mean, I saw a bunch of times when you'd read the Wrestling Observer and they'd say, Ric Flair's a champion. By the time you read it, he may not be the champion. So, I mean, I think that is the one plus about now is like they have updated results. I mean, and I really like that. But the team that I love, I mean, and this is, I mean, I'm already going out on a limb. The wrestlers of this program for me were the Road Warriors. I mean, this was when back they were really, really like mean looking. I mean, I think they were heels. I think they were better heels than baby faces because, I mean, I remember when they turned on Sting back in, I think it's like the mid 80s, and Tony Schiavone interviewed him in the locker room. I mean, they didn't break character. I mean, they, said, hey, it was Sting. Oh, it was Dusty Rhodes' fault because Dusty Rhodes went, and did some kind of charity event. But I am a big fan of this version of the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal with Precious Paul Ellering, and they were a great tag team. But the Lone Riders, Bill Irwin and Scott Irwin, I mean, I thought they were, great. But what were your thoughts on this match? I mean,
I enjoyed it. If I were to go back and watch one match, it would either be the first one or it would be this one, because I thought that the Long Riders, although the announcer called them the Pale Riders a couple of times, they surprised me. I had heard of the Irwins before, but they were big guys. They weren't, super big like the Road Warriors, but they put some hits on them, and I thought it was a fun match. It was, pretty even for the most part. One odd thing about this show is the finishes were a little lacking. The finish to this match was a clothesline from Hawk, who was on the outside, and they ended up pinning one of the Irwins. And I mean, you didn't see the Doomsday Device. There was another match where it wasn't a good. I'm trying to think of what the other finish was, that a guy didn't hit his normal finisher either. And I thought, yeah, it was kind of weird at the time period. But the people want to see Road Warriors win. They got a good win.
Yeah, I think as the heels, I mean, the Road Warriors losing, it didn't really happen. I mean,
Now would you think that maybe they had the best like overall record of all time? Because man, I can hardly remember them ever losing too much. Because you just wouldn't see it. You always wanted them to get the rub, and they were big no matter where. They're huge in Japan. They're huge here, obviously. And still today, they're still big. Both of them have passed away.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the event, I mean, who, I mean, we've watched this entire event. Who would be your, I guess, wrestler of the card? I mean, if you could put a vote right now, who would it be?
Oh boy. Uh, just knowing what the other matches were, I'm gonna say Larry Zabisco because he made that watchable. I enjoyed him, even though he was on the losing end with a disqualification. I thought he did the best. I can't really say Gagne or not Gagne, but Martel, which I have Rick Martel's with me here today.
Oh, well, that's nice that he decided to join us
Sure.
on the program.
He's got his own belt. It's the tag team from Strikeforce. But that Martel match with Bockwinkel was very rushed, so I don't think I would give it to either one. So I'll say Larry Zabisco because he was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun, but we were talking about earlier, like other happenings going on in wrestling. I mean, there were a lot of great shows this year. I mean, there was the War to Settle the Score. It was WWF had the main event, Hogan Piper. I mean, that was a great feud. We had the first ever King of the Ring was won by Don Morocco. That was back in 1985, and
Wow.
1985 Stark. Yeah, I don't even think that's on the WWE Network. It probably is, but that was a long time ago. I mean, I cannot believe King of the Ring. I mean, until recently they stopped doing that pay-per-view.
Yeah, well, because you don't really remember. Let's see who. Let me run off a few that I can remember. Haku,
Macho King.
Macho King, Harley Race, Hacksaw, because they got the crown and they kind of then they became King Harley Race or King Macho Man, and then it kind of fell off. They just redid it, and I'm trying to think who the last one was. Oh, Baron Corbin. King Corbin.
Yeah, I mean that. I'm not even. I mean, I don't know. It's. I am glad that the shows that we're talking about happened, pre-COVID, way before COVID, because I mean, just think. I mean, wrestling is. I mean, you could play football without a crowd. You could play basketball without a crowd. Whatever. I mean, that's fine. Pipe and noise, but wrestling is a sport, as an entertainment that people work off crowd reactions. And I don't think a lot of these wrestlers like the Road Warriors, Larry Zabisco, Rick Martel as a heel, Nick Bockwinkel, even Brad Reganis, would have done as well without getting the crowd reaction, because the Road Warriors, when they were heels, people hated him. I mean, but if you have no crowd, then you're not going to get that reaction. So I'm kind of glad that. I mean, what were your thoughts? I mean, what are your thoughts on people nowadays getting reactions? I mean, you don't really get. Do you think that's a detriment to wrestling without having crowds there? I mean, they have the WWE, the Thunderdome and the people coming from home, but you don't have a live crowd.
Well, here's my problem: is that you have smarks now, the smart marks, and I feel like the crowds know too much, and there are times when they can be detrimental.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. When Stone Cold Steve Austin did that, what, when people were talking, I enjoyed it when he did it.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, everybody's doing it in the audience at all random times for every interview. I'm like, God, that's pretty annoying. Yeah. So when they got smart and kayfabe went away, I don't know how much the wrestlers became reliant on the audience. Now, if you look at this card, I definitely think they had an impact on it, because there were times when they chanted boring, and then the wrestlers in that Rangus match, they started chanting that because they had like 3 rest holds in the first 3 minutes. And then they're like, okay, maybe we should start wrestling because the crowd is going restless. And that was a lame-o finish on that one too. But I think that what the Thunderdome or whatever they call it, I think that definitely does help out in chiming in crowd noise. I think that helps, but I think back when we look at these older ones, the audience mattered much more back then than it does now.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the what chant, that, I mean, oh my God, it's like, I mean, people are using it not in non-wrestling. I mean, a guy I work with, he says it all the time. I just want to punch him in the face. And there's I mean, hopefully he's not watching, but you know who you are. I mean, I remember it was a WWF Hall of Fame ceremony, and they started doing the what chant. I mean, those chants just like what? I mean, it was funny and it was great when Stone Cold did it. Stone Cold Steve Austin did it, but come on, folks. I mean,
Now that you mention it, the WWE Hall of Fame are the worst shows to watch because the crowd is so obnoxious.
yeah,
I mean, you alluded to it with the what chant and then just yelling from the crowd. I can't stand to watch. I want to watch it. I'd love to see these guys honored, but my God, do the audience take away from that stuff because they want to be part of the show.
yeah. I mean, that's another thing about. I mean, I think if they had this if they had a WWE Hall of Fame like back in the mid '80s or whatever, when the fans weren't as smart as they. I mean, most of the heel wrestlers would like Nikita Koloff or whoever. They would stay in gimmick all the time. I mean, they wouldn't just. I mean, you wouldn't. Now it's funny. I mean, I was looking on Twitter the other day, and I'm not. I'm a big AEW fan, but I think Jack Swagger and Orange Cassidy. I think they're in like not a feud, but they're not partners, but they were celebrating New Year's Eve together. I mean, it's like I know that everybody knows that most of these guys are friends, but it just kind of back then you did not know that. I mean, they were smart fans. I mean, there were people that that knew about it, but it was not the whole entire world, and that I think that led to the illusion of this is amazing, this is awesome, good versus evil. But now it's like, I mean, heels are getting cheered more than baby faces. It just I think all the social media stuff takes away, but I mean that's just my opinion. But I mean other things going on in the world of wrestling back in 1985. Imagine that Wrestler of the Year for the Observer and Pro Wrestling Illustrated was the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Tag Team of the Year in PWI was the Road Warriors, and on the Observer was the British Bulldogs. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, Road Warriors, Bulldogs. I mean, who do you think should be the Tag Team of the Year?
Road Warriors, of course. No, I enjoyed the Bulldogs too, but in terms of acclaim and notoriety, I think the Road Warriors had they might have been 3-year run there for PWI, which I was a huge PWI mark back at the time period. I absolutely loved that magazine and wish I still had the copies that I had back at the time period, but those are long gone.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Some things back in your youth you wish you could have now, but then if you did, then you'd have just a bunch of magazines that you probably wouldn't look at. But
hold that thought. Give me just a second, and I'll be right back.
Folks, see, this is why you have to watch the show each and every week.
Here's a surprise for you. I have a buddy who, his name is Mike too, that gave me his collection to sell for him, and he had some old WWF magazines. And so you say that they might be worthless. I say that they're priceless.
Oh yeah. Oh man, Miss Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Only 5 feet away from me.
I mean, hey, it was funny. I mean, I was reading this awards from 1985. The Rookie of the Year was Nord the Barbarian or the Berserker. And imagine that. I wanted to bring this up since Tyler decided to cut his internet and decided not to be with us tonight. We love you. We love you, Tyler. If you really don't want to be with us, just tell us. Manager of the Year, a man who he got assigned a picture from, Mr. James E. Cornette. I mean,
and that was 85?
Yep, 1985.
How old was he back then?
1985. Let me look on the old
I think he's only 58.
Yeah, I mean
59.
I know he started in Memphis. Jim Cornette, he is 59 years old. He was born in September 17th, 1961.
So he was 24 years old when he won that.
Yep. And
Holy cow.
He was a baby face, literally. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, but I know you. Another guy that I think we're both friends with. Both friends on you're on the LJN board, correct?
Mhm.
Pete, he does a Rockin' wrestling stuff.
Yeah.
This is actually the year that Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling debuted on CBS. I mean, when I watch that, when I see it on the internet, when I see it maybe streaming on some place, that brings back nostalgia. I mean, were you a big fan of the Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling back in the
I
day?
was, and I actually have a friend a couple weeks ago went down to a thrift store and found bed sheets of the Rock and Wrestling and the characters, and he gave me one of the sheets for myself to keep. Yeah, I loved it back in the day, but man, it does not hold up. I tried to watch some episodes about, I think last year. Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad.
I mean,
Because they didn't use the same voices. They didn't use the real people to do the voices, and you're just like, it doesn't really sound like them.
yeah, I mean, it kind of, I mean, it's funny that they say that the WWF has their whatever that animated series on,
Right.
which, I mean, do you think that's any better than? But I mean, because I haven't watched it much of it, but I mean, they use the actual wrestlers and the talent and the voices, correct or no?
Yeah, I think they do, but watching it as an adult versus watching it as what I say it was 11, it would have made a difference because I really would have loved to see a cartoon with your heroes in it, and now you're just like, Big Show's on it, so who cares?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, but other things that happened in 1985. I mean, there were a lot of birthdays, and I mean, the ravishing Russian Lana, she was born back in 1985. Kurt Hawkins, Jay Lethal, Tommaso Ciampa, the big dog. He's the head of the table. He's at the head of the table. The great Roman Reigns. I mean, Roman Reigns. I was never a fan of his, but his work right now is probably his best so far. I mean, in his career, don't you think?
Well, they finally found something to do with him because they pushed him down the viewers' throats, and he didn't have anything that people were. He's the big dog. He talks and says he's the big dog, and the Shield was great. Man, they broke that up way too soon. But he had all the skill and everything. He just didn't have a character, and now he's got a character. I like this version because you're getting into the Samoa history and the heritage and beating up the Usos and being at the head of the table. To me, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. This is actually very interesting. And it took, God, how long? Forever for them to find his character. And I think he stays a heel or that anti-hero for a long time period.
Yeah, and I think it's the only positive thing that's come from COVID. I mean, he went away because he has leukemia, and he didn't feel comfortable, being doing the shows. I mean, I think having a cooling off period with him away from wrestling, people forgetting about him, and then him coming back eventually, and I think that having the world's greatest manager right now, the great Paul Heyman as his, not even as a spoken, he doesn't say much. I mean, with Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman has to talk because Brock Lesnar, couldn't carry conversation in a bag. He walks to the ring and he's purple. Great wrestler, great. If he was here in the room, I would say he's my favorite wrestler of all time. But with Roman Reigns as the head of the table, he can talk. He can keep the crowd and just think whenever we do, and hopefully he'll still be a super heel when we get back to having crowds. What would happen if he had a crowd in the audience and had an audience in the arena? He would be booed so much, which is what they are looking for.
I don't know that he would be booed. Do you think? I think he almost has that, again, the anti-hero is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah. Jake Roberts. Was Jake ever a heel? Was he ever a face? He was one of those guys that was really kind of in between. And I think that's where Roman is too, that he can be a bad guy, but he can be a likable bad guy. Unless he does something, really awful to somebody. So I don't know. I don't know that he'd get booed, but I think he would win the crowd over, that they would actually, I don't know, they'd cheer for him, but they'd be a little more interested in his matches.
Yeah. And another birthday in 1985, the great former TNT or TNA or TNA, geez, AEW champion Cody. You can call him Rhodes. He was born back in 1985. I mean, did you see the tribute to Brody Lee?
I did.
I mean,
and that was just hearing of his death was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I cry, with sad things, when people die or I get bad news. But whenever the tribute, I mean, I was upset. I mean, I was, tearing up. I mean, he had just, I think, come into his own in AEW. I mean, them retiring that championship and they're going to rebrand it again. I mean, it was a fitting tribute. I mean, and he wasn't even in the company for very long, but people, it was just amazing. And of course, Big Red came in, his former tag team partner, at the end of the broadcast. So hopefully they sign him. Another birthday this year, the Usos. Speaking of the Usos getting beat up by the head of the table, Dean Ambrose.
That's interesting that those two. The Usos, obviously twins, but then with the big dog, they're cousins, and they're all born the same year. So that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's. And I wish they would bring The Rock back in for a little bit, and he would,
pass the torch,
or some. I don't know, because Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, he just upped his game. But another birthday back in 2 birthdays, they're married, Renee Young and Dean Ambrose. I mean, Dean Ambrose. I mean, he has also, found his calling in the AEW. I mean, it's interesting. People go to this company that's just starting, and their career gets resurged. I mean, it is just interesting. But the other thing that's interesting is the title match for the AWA Championship. The man who was actually in your shot a second ago, the great Rick Martel, taking on Nick Bockwinkel. I mean, what were your thoughts on this match?
Young versus old. It was, the face versus, the former champion being brought in. Bockwinkel still looked good in 85. I don't know how much further afterwards that he wrestled, but I can remember he was a lot older. But, I don't think anybody... It didn't really go one way or the other, and they ran out of time, right? Then it hit the 10-minute, it seemed like a 5-minute time limit. And even the announcer was like, I would say this is a slow match. And then they started to get the ball rolling. And then, by the time you got back into it, it was over. But I don't think either guy looked bad for any reason. And I don't think either guy really stood out.
No, but I mean, this Boris Zukov, Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, were you a fan of? I know you were a fan of Boris Zukov, but Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, Mr. G.I. Joe. American Hero.
Who?
Oh, hey, look. Oh man,
the most expensive wrestling LJN / Hasbro figure. There's the good old Sarge. Yeah, lucky enough to pick one of these up.
Yeah, I'm wanting to go to like not thrift shops, but places that you wouldn't think, like Goodwill, and I just want to find some, as they say, in the wild wrestlers. I mean, have you found any recently that you've picked up?
Not too many. I've got the whole collection plus extras, but the best one I ever got was a lot of figures of about 30 that had a lot of the big, what they call the black card figures of Haku and Warlord. And I was on a vacation in Lake Erie with my wife, and we were getting ready to get on a boat, and she went to the bathroom, and I was bored, so I got on my phone and started flipping through Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, and this lady had some, and she wanted $15 for the box, and it was over $1,200 in figures. And the lady said, "Well, you're next in line." I said, "Listen, you've got $1,200 worth of figures." I said, "Do not sell those for $15, even if you don't sell them to me." And she said, "Well, what would you give me?"
I'll give you 16.
I'll give you. I said, "Well, you tell me." I said, "I told you how much they're worth, but I said I can get 600." And she goes, "Okay." So my wife let me drive 90 minutes the other direction instead of coming home and pick these up. And the whole time I'm nervous. And I got there, and the lady, she needed the money. She needed $600, and I got the figures, and she said, your honesty, won me over. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I found that
So
on
they're
some.
still out there.
I mean, I found on some of the message boards, especially the LJN Facebook pages. I mean, you go there, you go to these flea markets, these trade things, and like people, some people know what they have, some people
Yeah.
don't. And I mean, I feel like it'd be dishonest if you picked up a, men on card Hulk Hogan or something. And it was worth, say $400, but they only wanted 15. I would feel bad. But I mean, there's some people
So you
that
give them 20.
I mean, I'll give it. Hey, I say, hey, if they want 15, I'll give them 30. I will give them double what they asked for.
Well, that bit me in the butt last year because a guy was selling a mint on card Hulk Hogan first series, and it was the same case where I messaged the guy and I think he only wanted $30. And I said, "Listen, buddy," I said, "that's worth a lot more than that." I said, "It's probably worth $300." And I was busy at the time and couldn't come over, and I was honest with him and said, if you know what it's worth now, I said, if you hold it, I'll come over and buy it from you. And the guy sold it out from under me and didn't even say thank you for telling him how much it was worth. So you win some, you lose some, and oh well.
I mean, hey, you can be honest, and then sometimes, like you said, it could bite you in the butt. But then you could, not tell the person that they have a really big collection, and then you feel bad, and then you sell it for 100 times worth the price. I mean, then you feel much
a little better.
Then feel about that's better. But before we get out of the program tonight, I know that as we were talking, you do custom rings, custom figures and stuff. How can people watch your entire? I mean, you have so many videos, so many great custom rings, custom this, custom that. How can they do that?
I'm on YouTube. All you have to do is put in Mike Steyer, as you see here, MikeStyer. If you search for that, I surprised myself the other day. I have over 100 videos on how to do figures, how to do rings, how to make ring ropes, and things like that. And it's just a lot of fun. I'm not showing people, that I'm a master of it. I want to show them that anybody can do this. And, especially if a guy who's untrained at art and stuff can do these types of things, and other people can too, and have a lot of fun. Like this Sergeant Slaughter was, he was in beat up shape. He looked terrible. And so I repainted him, and I got the new decals that I put on him, and he looks like new. And I feel good kind of giving these figures new life too, so that other people can enjoy them. Because I didn't have one when I was a kid, but now I do.
Yeah, I mean, and you get your stickers from the world famous same place that everyone gets them.
Cincy LJN. Cincy LJN.
I mean everybody seems to get they're from Cincy LJN. I mean, they do a great job. But yeah, I mean it's I have an Iron Sheik that I got to send off to somebody to redo, and I've seen a lot of great repurpose, like Sergeant Slaughter's Iron Sheiks. I mean, are there any products? I know that a lot of the stuff you're not going to be doing like outside, like painting, spray painting, because you live in a state that gets cold. Is there any projects that you got coming up, any customs that you're going to do that you kind of want to tease?
Well, I just finished a Harley race and a Ric Flair. I got some head molds from somebody, and I made those in the LJN style. And I actually ordered some belts, the big gold belts from NWA for both those guys and for Dusty Rhodes too. Trying to think, I have a Hacksaw that I'm redoing, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I have a new Macho Man that'll be coming up pretty soon. And I almost finished a total repaint of a one-man gang today. I was bored and watching the Browns game, so I just started working on this figure and got it all done.
Hey, I mean, you got to do something to pass time. But next week, as I said at the beginning of the program, Super Clash 3, I mean, it is a good show. It's got Jimmy Valiant, Wayne Bloom, a.k.a.
the Honky Tonk Man.
Yep, a young Wayne Bloom, Iceman King Parsons. We have Winnie Ricker.
Oh, wow. I have not seen an Iceman King Parsons match in a long time.
And we have a match that it's a women's street fight lingerie battle royale. Has a wrestler named the Syrian Terrorist, which That
Is this
just
Glow? It sounds like Glow
probably.
wrestlers.
Hey, Sergeant Slaughter taking on Colonel De Beers.
Oh yeah.
Colonel De Beers is with DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, the Samoan SWAT team, Samu Fatu,
Oh, I
with
love
Buddy
the
Roberts,
Samoan SWAT team.
taking on Michael Hayes and Steve Cox. Wahoo McDaniels. Sorry, Wahoo McDaniel. I know. I have heard.
McDaniel.
I don't know why people. I've heard on TV people call him Wahoo McDaniels. I don't know why. Taking on Manny Fernandez. Imagine that
That'll be
in a
good.
gimmick match, in an Indian strap match. Jeez. Anyway, Jerry Lawler, Kerry Von Erich, unification match. The Rock and Roll Express, Ricky and Robert taking on the stud stable of Robert Full and Jimmy Golden. And
Good choice.
yeah,
Good
I
choice.
mean, it's gonna be a good it's gonna be a good show. I mean, it's not on the network because, of course, why would that be on the network? Just type in youtube.com/Super Clash 3, and you'll find the entire program. But for the great Mike Steyer and for the great Tyler Peters, who will be back next week, I am David Fine. We will see you back here next week where we talk about Super Clash 3.